Hello lovely human beings that are here to watch me throw books at myself. It is time for my March wrap-up, where I have accidentally done that thing that I said I wouldn't do when I read 20 books in January, and read a very large amount of books in March. This is a 16 book wrap-up, I think? Yeah, 16 books. I completely blame Becca's Bookoplathon for reading 8 of these books, because that was an intense weekend of reading and I read a lot. So a good chunk of these were read over that weekend. But without further ado, I'm just going to start throwing them at myself. This is meant to be a super speedy style, so I'm really going to be very vague with what I'm telling you. I'm also not feeling 100% today, so I really don't want to make myself feel really worn out by making this video take too long as 16 books can take to wrap up. But let's go through it. Let's see what they were. First up is Loveless. This follows our main character as she goes to university. She's discovering what her sexuality is. She finds out words such as asexual, and she's realising that these words might associate with her. This is also about a story of her friendship and her journeys with trying to discover who she really is. I loved this very, very much. I loved the sense of love between friends in this as well, and I love the university setting. I've been wanting to read this one for a long time. It didn't disappoint me. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Killjoy by Holly Jackson. That was underwhelming to fall into shot because it's so small it's not going to make a noise. This is a very short prequel to the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, where it follows Pip at a murder mystery party arranged by her friends, and we see the start of her detective brain working along as we then see her in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder books. I really enjoyed this one. It is a novella, so it's not going to be like a huge breadth of a story, but it was fun for what it was, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Lie Beside Me by Geetha Lodge. This is one I worked on an ad with Geetha for, but this is completely separate and all these thoughts are all my own. This is about a woman who wakes up next to a man who is dead in her bed, except she has got no idea who he is, no idea how he got there. This worked out really well as a TV show in my head. There was a lot going on, a lot to feel gripped and pulled in by, and I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This is the 3rd book in the City of Ghosts series, where we follow Cassidy, whose parents run a show about ghosts, the investigators. They go to different countries, learning different things about ghosts. In the meantime, Cassidy can actually see ghosts and helps them move on to the beyond realm. This is her 3rd adventure and I absolutely loved it. It takes place in New Orleans. Completely grabbed me. The atmosphere was amazing and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. This one really disappointed me. I was expecting great things. It's about a lot of girls who go missing on an island, and it turns out that there is some kind of weird secret about this island that we're there to discover, except everything is spelled out for us. There isn't really anything left to the imagination, and it makes me feel like the reader doesn't really get to work it out themselves, which disappointed me a little bit. This one in the end only came out as 2 out of 5 stars. Oops. Then another one that won't make much of a sound because it's also very small, so this might be something to do with how I managed to read so many books, like 2 of them are very short and 2 of them are going to be graphic novels, spoilers. This is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Leigh. This is one that I read, I think this was the first one that I read for the Bookoplathon. This is a super short, almost fable-like story where we follow somebody who is being told a story about a woman's life, Rabbit, who is a handmaiden, and about her life and her love, and following the story of this journey that she's gone on in a very short amount of time, so it did feel very intense, very much like it was trying to teach us some good and some bad from the end of the story. I could have done with it being a bit bulked out because this was high fantasy and I needed more from this world to personally feel as connected as I could. This got a 3 out of 5 stars from me. This is Books of Magic Volume 2 by lots of different people, inspired by the world of Neil Gaiman, but I think predominantly by Kat Howard? Is that her name? Yes, Kat Howard. This is the 2nd in the graphic novel series, The Books of Magic, where we follow a young guy, or young boy, who has been told that he is a wizard and he can perform magic, and there's some danger involved in the world that is after him, so we follow his journey here as he's a bit more established with his magic and just trying to find out what has happened after the events of the 1st book. I liked this one, but I find it really hard to find a graphic novel I absolutely am obsessed with, so this one did get 3 out of 5 stars from me. Then I read a book that I don't actually have a copy of because I read it as an audiobook, and I think this only exists as an audiobook, but here's a picture if I can find one. It is The Only Living Girl on Earth by Charles Yu. This is a super short book about a girl who runs a gift shop on Earth, looking back at all the years on Earth, which is now no longer a thing. Very jolly, I know. It's a weird concept. I like it because it kind of turns Earth into this theme parky gift shop thing, but it's also terrifying. It's like a don't do this because this will happen cautionary tale kind of thing. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I'm not a massive fan of sci-fi dystopian-y things, but I read this one because it fit into a prompt for the Bookoplathon. Do it for the Bookoplathon. So I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, and I absolutely loved this one. This follows a girl who is covering up murders for her sister, who has become a bit of a serial killer with her partners, which is slightly worrying. Very short chapters, very addictive read, and gives us a different perspective to a story that would otherwise possibly feel fairly familiar, but this gives us a totally different spin on it, and I really enjoyed reading about the character's perspective of trying to cover these murders up, and not her sister's perspective of being the one in the middle of the drama. I mean, they're both very much in the middle of the drama, but it took a really interesting turn and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Fence Volume 2, another graphic novel. This one is by C.S. Passat, Jonathan the Mad and Joanna Lafuente. This follows some guys who are on the fencing team at their school. There's a lot of rivalry between them. This literally takes off where the last book ended, which is only over the course of a couple of days, so this does feel like it could have been a longer graphic novel. I did enjoy this. I'm not often one to read sportsy kind of books, but I quite like the banter between the characters here. I quite like the potential insinuation of romance that's going to come out of it, the angst, the tension, it's all there. But ultimately, as I've said, I do struggle with graphic novels to completely swoon over them, so this one did get 3 out of 5 stars from me. Then I finally read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I actually read it. This is the first book in the Grishaverse universe thing, and I have not read this book before, and I read it for the Bookoplathon because it was the first book in a series and that was one of the prompts. This follows our main character who basically discovers she is much more than she ever realised she would be in life, and she goes down this route of discovering who she really is, what she can really do, and what is good and what is bad. There is a TV series coming out of this on Netflix very soon, so I wanted to be able to read the series before then. Will I have read the whole series before then? I don't know, but I'm gonna give it a try. But I've actually read this one now, so yay. I liked this one a lot more than I thought. I genuinely expected to find it like typical YA. And whilst it is a bit typical YA, I did have fun reading it, so I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, there's not long left. Oh my god. It's so knackering to throw books at yourself. Then I read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This one is told in verse, as is Poet X by her, which I absolutely loved. This one is very grief-centric. It follows 2 girls who didn't know they were sisters until their dad, who they both share, dies in a plane crash, and they are kind of brought together. Now, the reason that I picked this one for the prompt for the Bookoplathon is because the prompt was to read a book that is out of your normal comfort zone or your normal genre. Now, for me, I tend to steer clear of books about grief. I just don't like reading them. They don't make me feel very positive. I don't tend to get much out of them. This is a book about grief. I think the story is really beautiful in the sense of bringing 2 characters together that had no idea the other existed and have totally different ways of living their lives that don't include the other, and the way it brings them together. But personally for me, because this was grief-centric, I didn't like it as much as I liked Elizabeth Acevedo's other works within the Poet X, so this one did come out as 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Disfigured, haha, picture here, by Amanda Leduc. This is a non-fiction about fairy tales and how they represent disability. It looks at the idea of the villain always being the disabled one, and if it's not the villain, then the disability is almost redeemed and eradicated by the end of the book, or the end of the story, and I thought this was such an interesting book. As someone that has scoliosis myself, I can see that more villainous characters are represented within something that is a bone condition that I cannot help, and that is a kind of crappy feeling to see it only being associated with villains and or people that can magically get rid of the condition. So this book completely did a deep dive into that. I think the way that the narrative worked with it made it very compelling. It was very relatable as well. It referenced very many different types of fiction, that there is something for everyone really, and I think this is a really important book to read to just be more aware of how this is done within the media that we're consuming. Again, I still haven't got my head around rating non-fiction. I just need to sit down and work out a system. It's just me being distracted and busy, so I will do that. But I think maybe a 4 or 5 stars for this one because it just felt so poignantly, brilliantly brought together that I really found it very insightful. Then I read Sarah Penna's debut novel, The Lost Apothecary, and oh my god, this might be one of my favourites of the year. This follows a woman in modern day who has found a vial that she wants to investigate that links back to the 1800s, where we see a woman who runs an apothecary in which she sells vials of potions to women who want to kill their oppressive husbands. This is such a good story. This is immensely empowering from both time zones. It is not falling down the typical route of how you expect the relationships to happen. It is very much a power to the women type of book, and I absolutely bloody loved it. If you can get your hands on this, do. I know that Amazon at the moment have a backlog of it, and I don't think it's in the UK bookshops yet, or many of the UK bookshops yet. I really hope it does because I absolutely loved it, but this got 5 out of 5 stars from me. Then I read House of Holo by Crystal Sutherland. This is another one I'm working on an ad with the publishers for, but again, I read this off my own back. My views are all my own. This is a very short horror about some girls who went missing when they were children. They came back a month later, but they were never quite the same. And then things start to happen to them as they get a bit older, and it's all very weird. This was very creepy. It definitely made me feel like I didn't necessarily want to be reading it alone in a flat at night, but here I was. I quite enjoyed the atmosphere and the way that it filtered all of that together to make me feel creeped out, but I think for me this lacked a little tiny bit of the bulk of who these people were outside of this terrible tragedy that happened to them, and I suppose the point of that is that they're not really able to escape this terrible tragedy that happened to them, but generally the atmosphere was superb and I really like that side of it, and this one got 3 out of 5 stars for me. And finally, the last book of the month I read is Haruki Murakami's Norwegian Wood. This is about a guy who is on a plane going somewhere, and he basically is thinking back to his younger days, and he thinks back to when he was in his 20s at university and all the stuff he got up to. So this is, it's not really a coming of age story, but it just follows his life in his early 20s and everyone that he met around that time and the women that he slept with. I wish I loved this more than I did. I didn't love it at all. I found this was very, very disappointing and it felt really flat for me. There is a whole vlog of me talking purely about my reading experience for this book because it angered me so much. I completely acknowledge that this is originally written in Japanese, translated from Japanese. Hang on, let's acknowledge the translator's name because that is always an art. J. Rubin translated it from Japanese. So I acknowledge it's translated fiction, I acknowledge it's written about a different culture completely, get all of that, but for me there was so many sexist moments in this book, so many sexist quotes, so many quotes that narrowed women down to periods and men down to wanking, and it just made me so mad, so mad. So I actually ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars. This is my book club pick for the Patreon book club that I run that is bi-monthly, so this is the book from March to April, and I have to say that we're all really enjoying the fact that this is the book because we are all pulling it apart and it's like a proper discussion book. So it is fascinating us and causing lots of discussion topics. So if you are interested in joining in with that, there is still plenty of time because we've got another month. There is a link down below. Oh, okay. I did it. Oh my God, that was my wrap up. Whew. I always feel like I talk so fast, but that is the point of these wrap-ups. They are the super speedy wrap-ups. Filming the thumbnail is going to be fun, so that's great. But those are all the books I read within the month of March. Sorry if this wrap-up was a little bit different to normal. It's just that, as I said, I've not been feeling the best this week, and I just needed to film this in my lunch break today, so I'm a little bit knackered, I'm a little bit cloudy in the brain, I probably sound a little bit bunged up, but it's all good. If you did enjoy this video, please give my 16 book wrap up a thumbs up. I need to stop reading so many books and just focus on like quality over quantity, because most of those are 3 stars. Like, hang on, I'm looking at my core pile. If you want to know what core pile is, by the way, there's a link down below. It's a rating system that G from Book Roast created. It's amazing. There's like, you can't see that, but like there's loads of different things you can put in it to filter and it helps you rate your books. So I gave 2 4 stars, 2 5 stars, and then the rest are 3 or 2 stars. It's not great. That's not great. I think I'm going to focus on like the bigger fantasy books on my shelf or the bigger literary fiction books on my shelf over the next month, so I can maybe hone it in a little bit. I don't know, it's just a lot of books to wrap up in 1 month and I'm starting to forget what I'm reading as well. So anyway, there's my 16 book wrap up. Yeah, if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you want to comment down below how many books you read this month, please do that as well. Or you can subscribe to see more of my face on your feed. Any of these things really help my channel grow and help me to live my dream, which is amazing. If you wanted to see any more content from me, including like behind the scenes stuff and more details about the books that I read, more personal chats, Discord family, polls, voting, book clubs, live shows, podcasts, all of that is linked down below in my Patreon, which is amazing and fun. And if you would choose to support me there, then I am massively grateful. And also if you're not able to, please don't feel bad about that. I totally understand. There is no obligation, no content changes here. It's just a little bit of extra. I'm going to take a breath now. Thanks so much for watching. Keep smiling and stay positive.